So what do you think is the solution here?
For the immediate solution, I don't know if you want to add tax dollars by hiring, another qualified engineer. If you're not looking to do that, I know, as an example, us buying a property for $1 million, if we have to hold that property and wait for a year approval, we're looking at paying 4% interest, we're looking at another $40,000. If we were to pay a little bit more to have it subbed out to an engineer and approved in 3 months, that might be worth our time as a developer to have that done. But I would say there needs to be a little bit more organization in public works, and there needs to be deadlines, and without these deadlines being met, paperwork will just sit on someone's desk and just wait to be approved, maybe because there's other things to approve. But if with deadlines, paperwork will be looked at in a timely manner. It won't just sit on someone's desk for 2 months and then, oh yeah, that's there, it's coming up on 3 months, I better look at it now.
Thank you. That's all I'll pursue right now, because I guess I'm looking for solutions on how we can keep this county busy.
I think that there hasn't been a lot of added staff recently, especially with planning and public works. I think that needs to be looked at and see if, because all these counties are growing, and if we're not meeting the needs. And I'll give you an example. Brant County hasn't been doing their growth of their town, and this past year, Norfolk County had a larger amount of growth than all of Brant County. And that shouldn't happen. They're closer to Toronto. They should have far more growth than we had. But because of I guess maybe their council wasn't allowing more land, planning maybe wasn't allowing more land, they missed the boat on this huge economic growth.
Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, for letting me speak again. Sam, you mentioned you're looking at developing a condo development?
Yes.
In Waterford, I believe you said?
Yes.
Site plans required?
Yes, I believe it was a part of it.
Yeah, so
yes.
When you have a site plan requirement, do you ship that off to a consultant to give you the site plan back that you submit, or does he submit to the county?
I believe we hired Valley Engineering
Right.
to do it, and I believe they submitted it on our behalf. And
how is his time frame?
Well, I know they're busy, quite busy, and if they need to meet the demands, they would hire more people. But we found that they were getting back in a timely manner. Yes.
Okay, so it's from the time he submits, like you're given, like they're aware of there's site plan guidelines, like to spell out what you got to have
right.
on a site plan.
Yes.
But do you find, so the delay you're talking about is when that site plan goes to the county, correct?
So what
Not for Mr. Valley.
That's right. So we applied for this condo development back in September,
correct,
of last year. And we received our first submission maybe around, I think it was end of December, maybe in January. So we waited a good 3 to 4 months to hear back. And then it took Valley Engineering 1 month to put together the rest of the paperwork that Norfolk County required. Mm-hmm. And then they submitted again. And then it took another, I think, a month or two at that point to hear back. So the first submission always takes longer because there's a lot more for Norfolk County to go through. But it's the second and third, maybe they can, they've already gone through it once. Maybe the second or third should only take a month, and they're just looking at the stuff, the paperwork that they've requested from the first submission.
That's good. How many units? The
20,
Waterford one?
26.
And how many acres?
It's 3 acres, I believe.
Okay, so the site plan should be pretty straightforward, I would think, with that.
This was an extremely basic subdivision, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our deputation? Thank you very much, Mr. Bunny.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Geisen, seconded by Councillor Wells, that the deputation of Sam Bunting respecting development timelines be received as information. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Black? No? Those in favor? Okay, it is received as information. Anything further? Councillor Black?
Mayor Luke, sounds like there's a problem. And I think the first step to find out a little bit more about the issue is to ask staff for a report. And I would move a motion requesting staff, and I'm sure it's going to involve more than one department, public works and planning, and to have them come back and give us some information in this regard and what we need to do to solve the problem. Probably maybe some temporary hiring, but I think we'd like to see what a report would say before we get into the hiring aspect of it. But that would be my motion, if that's in order.
Yes, it is. Right with you. I'll need a seconder. Councillor Wells? Yes, you can.
I just wanted to know
Please.
how long, Councillor, is he putting a timeline on this before we get the report back?
Staff, of course, it is always, I'm glad that Councillor Wells raised that because it's important that we get this back in a timely manner. But let me ask staff what their thoughts are.
Are you looking for something before the summer break? We're
Well, I'd
2
like-
months,
I'd like
a
to
little
know,
less than that,
you know,
a month and a half.
what can staff do reasonably without
County
compromising
manager, do you wish
anything
to
else?
comment?
This has been a subject of some discussion, both prior to my employment here and in the time I've been here. I am confident we could come back with a fulsome report with options prior to the summer break.
Okay.
4 or 5 weeks in that, 6 of the outside, but 4 or 5 seem reasonable. Beg pardon, seem
So
reasonable.
then you wouldn't mind if that was part of the motion then?
No,
The
we'd
report come back
We'd be
before the
happy to
break?
be held accountable to that deadline.
Okay, let's make that part of the motion then, to bring it back before our break. Thank you, Councillor Wells.
I'll read the motion now that I'll make sure I've got it accurate, and then certainly more discussion. Black has moved, Wells has seconded, that staff be directed to present a report respecting development timelines and potential solutions to be brought back by July the 11th, 2017. That's our final council meeting before summer recess. Does that sound fair? Councillor Columbus, please, and then Councillor Oliver to the motion, if you
Mr.
will.
Mayor, the note we have here from staff, Pam and Gary Houghton, on page 9 of the agenda package, talks about this initiative to commence June 1st. So I take it we are not going to implement that June 1st date, is what's stated here in the memo from our staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we were just confirming our message, but this memo is really just to reflect the current timelines that are happening right now within our development process.
So, Pam, are you saying that we will be continuing as we are right now until further notice?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are doing the best we can.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Status quo until we get this report and figure out what we're doing? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I certainly do support the motion, and I appreciate Councillor Black bringing it forward. When I read through the memo, and I want Ms. Robinson to correct me if I'm misreading it, but I got the impression from reading this is that it is the Public Works and Environmental Services Department that is requesting longer time periods in order to review applications. I'm just looking at that one line halfway down the first page. Is that in fact correct? In other words, it's not the planning department that's feeling its pressure, it's because Public Works is requiring more time, which therefore automatically causes more delay for the whole process. Is that accurate?
Through the mayor to council, yes and no. The purpose of the memo was to actually officially advise us the timelines that are currently occurring. This is how long it's currently taking us to undertake the work. So it was official. It was the sort of official notice that this is how long it's currently taking us. This isn't asking for additional time. It's a notification of how long it's currently taking. And I believe the deputation articulated some of those concerns very well this evening. And the timelines that he was specifying are actually in accordance with the memo that we had provided. So it's not that we're asking additional time, it was more that we were advising that this is how long it's currently taking us to undertake these reviews.
Okay, that is quite different than what I read in the report, and I appreciate whoever, I guess Pam and Gary wrote it, but I mean, it specifically says, Public Works is asking for additional time to review applications, and then in accordance with the 4 bullet points underneath that. So that to me says, they're requesting an increase in the amount of time they're going to use. I don't need another response, so that's okay. But Mr. Mayor, one of the things that I'm going to ask for then as part of this report back from staff is I would like to know specifically who within Public Works and Environmental Services, by position, if not by name, what positions are involved in reviewing the various kinds of applications that are being talked about in this memo? How many positions and what the positions are? That's just a request that that be part of the review that comes back to us.
I can advise you now if you would like.
I don't need it right now. I do.
We have 2 full-time staff, and all they do is review development applications. There are, if I'm not mistaken, 6 full-time planners that feed the 2 full-time staff in Public Works, and they are development technologists. And that's all that they do is review development applications. It's their full-time job, and they're working about 6 days a week right now to try to keep up. And we haven't, obviously, we're not being very successful at that, as well as we send a considerable amount of work out to a consulting firm to review on behalf of the county, and we're still unable to keep up with the number of applications that are coming in to date.
And one final one, Mr. Mayor, if you'll permit it. Mr. Bunting suggested or hinted, well, he didn't hint, he told us that his for example, site plans are done by Valleys, which is a professional engineering firm. And I guess a simple question, Lee, and perhaps this also could be part of one of the options that comes back, just as we did over the last year or so, where we deferred, if you like, responsibility and mandate to the Ontario land surveyors to do the drainage plans, and that eased us from having the pressure of time having to do that. Could that be part of the solution here, that if an engineering firm stamps the draft plan documents or the draft site plan document, that is what we need and therefore would speed our approval process rather than taking a whole bunch of time from our, I forget again the technical name of the staff positions, but just rely on the engineering work that's been done by the consultant paid by the developer and reduce the amount of time that we have to, if you like, double check and duplicate a review.
Through the mayor to council, the difference between a site plan and lot grading is that the county has reviewed and accepted the overall subdivision lot grading for the entire thing. So effectively, what the surveyors or the engineers are doing is making something fit within an already accepted plan, whereas site plans don't have anything accepted to be able to fit into. So we do need to undertake that review from a county point of view to make sure that all of our requirements are being met, whereas with the lot grading, that's already been done as part of the master grading plan. So it's sort of the second step of the process, which is why we didn't feel that it was necessary from a lot grading point of view to be reviewing work that's already been reviewed and accepted, whereas with the site plan, we don't have that preliminary stage that's taken place already.
Okay, back to the motion then. And I think there'll be lots of discussion when we get the staff report in the next 6 weeks. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Our next deputation is from Mary Weber, and her deputation concerns shoreline management, and we'll wait for Mary and go from there. Should be a talk button there on the right hand. There you go. Thank you.
It's red? Am I on?
Yes, Mary, thank you very much, and you're certainly no stranger to deputations, 10 minutes, and when you're ready to begin, we're ready for you. Thank you.
Okay, councilors, Mr. Mayor, I'm here to speak to you about shoreline protection along the Lake Erie shoreline at Long Point. First of all, I'd like to thank you for adding me to the agenda today. I think there was some confusion as to what I wanted to speak about when I put my initial application in last Wednesday, so I appreciate you adding me at the last minute today. Okay, I have a presentation of video which was taken last fall, and then you all have a packet of pictures that were taken within the last week or two, so I'll be referring back and forth to certain pictures so you can see the difference. Land is eroding at a quick pace, and our hands are tied in trying to stop it. And by our hands, I mean property owners. I know this is hazard land, I know this is protected land, but I ask you, who are you protecting it for? Right now, with the restrictions placed upon us, you're not protecting it for property owners. If you don't allow shoreline protection, you're ultimately not even protecting the road, the dunes, the marshes, species at risk, and any other flora and fauna that is native to Long Point. By not allowing shoreline protection, you are very quickly losing the very thing you proclaim to be protecting. If you can fast forward to the 2-minute, 30-second mark. That will be footage of the public beach last summer. This is county-owned property. This beach was enjoyed each and every day by day trippers who came to relax at county's advertised attempt to increase tourism in our area. If you look at photo 1 in your packet, that is the same public beach taken last week. It's gone. It's gone because there's no shoreline protection in place. The waves have washed away sand right up to the road, and this part of the road gets flooded every time it rains. At the 450 mark, you can see a white cottage that is surrounded by poured cement and cement blocks. And I'm not picking out any specific cottages. I will point to mine too, but I'm just picking out cottages with shoreline protection. This private property is protected by the wave action. If you look at photo 3, you can see how the wave action has kind of bypassed that shoreline protection on that cottage and circled around and eaten away all the land to the east of it. Same cottage that you see there, same protected property, but now the waves have swirled around those cement blocks and eroded away county-owned property. The white cottage and its surrounding lot remain solid because of that shoreline protection. At the 545 mark, you see a blue cottage. Again, protected all around by poured cement and cement blocks. The two properties to the east of this cottage, and that would be to the right of the cottage as you see it on the screen, are gone now. If you look at photo 4, the property with the wooden fence had a trailer on it, on that land, with room for a picnic table and a fire pit on it last year. This year, there's not even enough land to park a car on. But the blue cottage is still there with its property intact because of their shoreline protection. Private properties to the west of the blue cottage have some form of shoreline protection, some rock, some stone, preventing it from erosion, and that's shown on photo 5 in your packet. You can see the shoreline protection there with the land to the left of it. At the 755 mark, you see properties that have no shoreline protection, and these properties are considerably smaller now. At the 9-minute mark, from the property at 173 Hastings, and it's a property that has the 2 white trailers on, and westward, there's some shoreline protection to some degree there, and they are not eroding away as a quicker rate as the unprotected properties. If you go to the 10:30 mark, 10 minutes, 30 seconds, just so no one is worried that I'm picking out cottages, these are my properties. The blue cottage with the boat ramp has substantial shoreline protection, which was there when I purchased the property, was put in after the 1985 storm. And a little bit further down, there's a gray cottage that has 2 decks jutting out towards the water. These 2 decks now, that's also my property, have water right underneath them. Both of my cottages are protected because the previous owners put in shoreline protection years ago, so I'm not worried about that. It's the unprotected lands that surround these properties that I'm worried about. The 2 vacant lots next to my property would be at the 11:33-minute mark, have no substantial shoreline protection. Last year they were nice sandy beach. Now there's only gravel and a much smaller piece of land. Fast forward a little bit to the 12:10 mark. We're coming up on county-owned property again. This strip of land has no shoreline protection, and there's no property left. Look at photos 6, 7, and 8. These were taken after the big windstorm we had approximately 3 weeks ago. Photo 6, I'm standing on the road looking directly out onto the lake. The only thing between me and the water, standing on the edge of the road, is about a 2-foot wide log and some small rocks. The next picture, number 7, I'm looking to the left towards the last cottage before the property-owned land. And picture number 9 is a picture of the road the day of and the day after that storm that was washed up on the road. That is County Road. They spend many, many dollars maintaining this road after the storms, and with the high wave action, deposits all kinds of stuff onto this road. And again, the only part of Hastings Drive that gets flooded after storms is the roads abutting on county-owned property that have no shoreline protection. So if you go to the 16-minute mark, at the end of Hastings, where the county has plowed a huge berm and put in a gate on the shore to allow the property owners that own properties past that berm further west access, that road always floods. If you look at the last 4 photos, they were taken the day after that storm, which looks like another lake on County Road. Number 9 and 10, I'm standing in the same spot. Number 9, I'm looking west. Number 10, I'm looking east. I'm standing in front of the last property. Number 11 is just showing a pickup truck driving through that to show you how deep the water is, halfway up his wheels. And number 12 is the very last cottage on Hastings. In conclusion, the road only floods in areas abutting county road lots that have no shoreline protection. Now, this erosion, which last year our big concern was just Hastings, it's working its way down Woodstock Ave on Long Point proper, and that's Sector 2, if you recall that designation from the Technical Advisory Committee last year. It's undercutting decks and cottages. Cottage owners recently applied for emergency conservation authority permits to bolster up their decks and cottages after that storm, and they were turned down. The first 10 cottages on Erie Boulevard on the lakeside have water right up to and underneath their decks and cottages. This erosion problem is spreading east at an alarming rate. We have to use common sense now. We don't need more studies. We don't need more committees. We need your permission to put in shoreline protection. Gabion baskets, posts, block, whatever you decide, cottage owners are willing to protect their property. Tie all the shoreline properties together, which would include the county properties, all the way from the end of Hastings at the west end to the new provincial park. Protect the properties, protect the marsh, protect the dunes, protect the grasses, protect species at risk. If you do not allow us to do anything, your investment in purchasing these vacant lots will be lost, as will our investment in our properties. The dunes and marshes that you are so adamant about protecting will be lost, and for what? For lack of foresight to protect that land. We just want to protect our properties and enjoy the land. We really do care about the environment and protected species and lands, and we just want to live in harmony with the surrounding beauty we have in this county. If you want Long Point, including and especially Hastings Drive, to be here years from now, let's start to protect it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Are there any questions, Councillor Oliver, please, to the deputation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mary, for your presentation. Are you going to make the same presentation to the board of the LPRCA if you haven't already done so?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I'm sure you realize, first and foremost, they are the regulatory body for what you're talking about, not this council.
I realize that, but I'm hoping this council would back us. Because it's your county, you should have a say in it.
Any further questions? Councillor Brunn?
Thank you, Mayor Luke, through you to Mary. Mary, did you get any videos down, I don't know what we call it, where Area Ave starts, down that way? I know
To the left?
Yeah.
I don't have any video of that because this video was taken last year when we were concerned about Hastings. I did take some pictures. I haven't got any pictures of how Woodstock is eroding now, but it's a concern. We're losing beachfront property on Long Point at an alarming rate.
Well, I was there a week ago, and I took a good look at, I call it, where the Taj Mahal is there on the curve, just around there and at the back of those cottages. It's right up to the back of them too. You don't have videos of that?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further? Hearing none, thank you very much, Mary. I will need a mover and seconder to receive his information. Wells has moved. Brunton seconded. That the deputation of Mary Weber respecting shoreline protection be received. His information. Any discussion? Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I'd like to turn to page 124. It's the second to the last page in your agenda. This is Councillor Height's motion on shoreline protection. Councillor Black?
Mayor Luke, before we hear the motion, I have two points of order. I wondered if you could rule upon or
Well,
have staff.
you put them out and we'll
First,
get a ruling on them.
First of all, I have a concern about jurisdiction, and according to our procedural bylaw, like our business has to do with Norfolk County business. I don't believe this is our business. We've actually heard from Councillor Oliver that it is within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Authority or even other federal bodies and agencies. So I wonder if we should even be entertaining this because it isn't within our jurisdiction. What's it called? Ultra vires or something like that? So I wondered if you could rule on that, whether it's something that we should be dealing with or not.
I'm going to get a ruling from the clerk on the procedural part. I have some thoughts, but I'd rather get it from the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our procedural bylaw says that we won't hear any deputations on matters outside of our jurisdiction. So that would be the one area where we would definitely wouldn't hear anything. We've just heard a deputation upon that. So it's there's that issue. It doesn't say anything in specific to, I don't think, councillors, but, I mean, you always get into the shark fin debate where council passed the ban on shark fins, and they were overruled later on by the government. So there are areas where councils do wade into areas where they are beyond their jurisdiction and are told by other levels of government not to. If that's any muddier of the waters.
And so procedurally, we are within our rights to deal with this motion? That's my question, I guess.
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
But the shoreline piece is clearly conservation.
Yeah, that's somewhat along my lines of thinking, if I may, that when I read this motion, the part of the motion is that council get a report to look at protecting our own taxpayer lots, which is something I think that we can initiate as a council to protect our county. When I say our county, I mean our taxpayers in shoreline. So that part of it tells me that that's something that council can.
Okay.
You tell me if I'm off base with the way I interpret this. And also recognizing with that discussion or a motion to proceed to get a staff report, obviously I agree with Councillor Oliver that to do shoreline protection, we too, as a county, would need permission from somebody higher up than us, that being LPRCA, I would believe. So I think part of it says it is an order, and part of it says we're asking for a staff report, and we are here with the options.
All right.
My feeling is that's an order. To say that we're going to spend money and do shoreline protection, we're going to have to apply to get permission, and that's totally different than this motion.
Okay, thank you for that. You've answered that question. My second
Yes, go ahead.
Procedural concern is I have received some concerns in an email about Councillor Height's pecuniary interest. I know it's not within the jurisdiction of staff or this council to rule or order him, but I am concerned that he has already declared a pecuniary interest owning property on Hastings, and this will affect him. And yet he's the one putting this motion forward, and I would like to, and I know it says county property, but it's going to, if the county does this, it's going to affect and benefit every other property owner on Hastings Drive, not just Norfolk County. So would it be in order for me to ask?
Question of personal privilege, Mr. Mayor.
If I could ask the councillor to respond to that, please.
Councillor Height, you wish to respond?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. If the member is accusing me of misconduct, there is a time and place for that in the court of law. Right? If you want to go there, we'll go there. But today, I'm bringing forward this motion for the majority of the people on Long Point. I know that the former councillor has already sent me an email that she'll be taking me into court if we move ahead with this, and I'm willing to take that.
Thank you, Councillor. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need cheers and boos. There is place for that. But we're dealing with county business here, and I appreciate it if you can.
Mr. Mayor, would you allow Betty to clap on my behalf?
I would.
You allow the other ones to clap on the other councillor's behalf.
Anyhow.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I've asked a question, and I've got my response, and that's all I was looking for. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Black. How do you want to proceed with this notice of motion? I do not have, it's not a notice, it is a motion. It's not in the package, is it in there? Yeah. Be right with you. I didn't see. Well, I'll pull mine off if you want to use that. Nope, be here, I got it. I'm good. I'm good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Height, you are certainly the mover of this motion. I do need a seconder. I don't have a seconder at this time. Councillor Geisens. I'm going to read the motion, then I'm going to entertain discussion. Councillor Height has moved and Councillor Geisens has seconded that staff be directed to present a report with options to hire a coastal engineer to develop a shoreline protection plan for Long Point, including county-owned lots on Hastings Drive. And that letter be sent to Premier Wynne and the Honourable Catherine McGarry, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, requesting that the Province of Ontario review the Shoreline Property Assistance Act to provide further options for land owners to undertake shoreline protection improvements with copies to local MPs and MPPs. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brunton and Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. You know, I skipped a grade in public school, and I thought I was getting pretty smart. But I am totally confused here now. Yes, we had discussed a lakeshore study in 2014, correct me if I'm wrong, with the Riggs Engineering. I sent that out today to people. And I stand to be corrected, but I agree it's something Long Point must deal with, is the shoreline protection. Whether we asked for it or not, I don't know. I don't know what the ramifications are, but when it comes down to Councillor Height owning a lot, I'm certainly not a lawyer and can't answer for him, but we own lots there, so if we approve something, we're all at fault, are we not? The county own lots there. We all got a conflict. Anyways, I think when I looked at this, I was hoping if we would not just worry about Hastings. There are other properties, I'm going to use the word heading east, on the front of the lake that need some form of protection. And I think we owe it to the people of Long Point, the taxpayers, if I might say, that we do something to protect them. I think that's what we're here for. Are we not? To protect the people that we gather taxes from? Anyways, I'll support the motion, and but only if it doesn't just take into Hastings. I'd like to see it expanded to look at the other cottages that are just, I think it's called east and starting down Erie Ave. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, if I may, Councillor Broughton, the motion asks for an engineer to develop protection plan for Long Point. And it just also says including county-owned lots along Hastings. So it is for Long Point, the way I interpret this.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Black, then Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, and no, I will not be supporting the motion. First of all, it's not within our jurisdiction. And secondly, I think it's a private property matter. I have, in the past, owned property in Avalon Park, on the cliffs, I don't know, about 60 feet. And I think that was back in 1977 or so. And beautiful property overlooking Long Point Bay. Absolutely one of the most gorgeous. I wish I still owned it, except the bank was going into the lake. So my option was I didn't go to anyone and ask them to spend money on my behalf. I went in and bought that property with open eyes. I saw the bank. I saw the erosion. My solution was to sell it. Eventually, I think one or two other people had to move that cottage back. Now, I'm wondering if we get into shoreline protection of Hastings, now where does that one stop? We already know that there's problems further on down, and we have quite a large coastline. So what about farm properties further on down that are might be impacted by the wave action and the banks falling into the lake? What about them? Now, are we going to compensate them or do a plan for them? I think you're opening up a can of worms. It's a private matter. I don't see any money in any budget. I mean, if we were going to approve this, maybe If council, the majority wants to, it should be forwarded to budget session for monetary deliberations, where we're going to get the money for this, and that it's really a bigger problem than just Hastings Drive. We have had presentations or information given to us by different agencies. I think the one I recall was from the Biosphere, and the Biosphere talked about shoreline protection. And you can look at Hastings and the larger maps, and you can see where there is shoreline protection, that the wave actions do, in fact, skirt around it, and they start to take more earth and from an area further east, usually. So you're sending that problem on down, unless you do that whole area of Norfolk County. And then if you do all of Norfolk County, then we shift our problem down to Haldeman, and so on and so forth. So it's, I don't think you're going to solve this problem. Hastings Drive is on Big Creek Delta. It's like a thin strip of sand, and behind it you have a delta just waiting and ready to overpour the banks of the road and the property lots on the one side and the wave action on the other side. It's a very precarious place. People buying it know it. So why all of a sudden do you think, oh, okay, I just realized there's a problem here. Let's go to Norfolk County and see if we can get them to fix it for us. I mean, this is what I've been saying all along, is that it's no place to develop because of the problems with the erosion, the Big Creek, the delta there, and at one time that delta and that river did come through and empty through Hastings Drive. It's closed for the time being, but who knows when it might open up again with the next storm. So there's just no way that we should be dealing with anything like this. This is a private matter. Will not support the motion and ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For me, doing nothing is not an option here. Mr. Barrett, if you would, please. The slideshow. That's the one. If you could jump to the next page. Oh, yeah, this is Woodstock Avenue. Okay, the next one. More on Woodstock. See all the gabion baskets? There's people that have been there for so long, they don't even realize that there is shoreline protection underneath those areas because it's been sand, and it's been sand for decades, and that sand is now gone. Okay, next one, please. Again on Woodstock Avenue. Residents are having to block off stuff to keep people safe right now. Next one, please. These are the county-owned lots down on Hastings Drive. I was down there yesterday. I'm going to show you some pictures on what it looks like when there's a bit of a southwest wind. Next. Again. This is your road. This is a picture from my truck sitting in the water. Okay? That's what it looks like down there. Next one. There it is. That's yesterday afternoon. Okay? The whole left side there, where a lot of people in my area think that the sidewalk they ripped up from Erie Boulevard could have went there and saved us some money and still protected our road, but they paid to haul that away. It's a little silly, but these things happen. But honestly, that's what our road looks like down there right now. So if there's a washout, there's cottages past these points. How are they getting off? By boat? Okay, the Municipal Act states that we shall protect users of the highways, roads, and bridges from unreasonable risk of harm of which the authority has knowledge or through reasonable steps could be expected to be aware of in order to prevent or to remedy the risk of harm. Are we doing that right now? Because that is a risk of harm. All right? We have a duty of care to protect our infrastructure. In recent weeks, you've all seen pictures of sandbags being placed on the Toronto Islands, while pumps are running constantly to remove the standing water. Both Bowmanville and Minden were also flooded. 400 soldiers were called into Montreal to help. Did their council wait? Because while everyone was enjoying a picnic with their family, I hope, yesterday, this is what it looks like in my area. And I'm having a hard time sleeping, if you don't mind, because I'm concerned about what's going to happen in case of a storm here. And it's not the cottages. You've seen them fortified. It's not them. They can't get away from here. And it's because Norfolk County, in my opinion, is being negligent in not protecting this road. This is a county problem, not a conservation authority problem. Next slide, please, Mr. Baird. Again, more pictures of our shoreline. Next. That's it. And this is just yesterday. That's another one. Again, scads of rubble. You can see in this picture, this cottage, the beach to the right side was county owned. That's washed out now. Okay, so go another one, Chris. We'll come back to there. Here's a cottage at the end who desperately needs shoreline protection. You can see the deck is in trouble, right? So somebody in the approval processes has to fix this, right? Next one, please. Jump ahead a couple. We'll come back to that one. One more. Again, ahead. Ahead. Sorry. This is a permit from the Conservation Authority here that was dated April 24th, but the proposed start date was, April the 1st. The permit date itself was April 28th. So the permit got put in after the work was already been done. And if you'll jump ahead one more, it's from Norfolk County. So Norfolk County already does work on Hastings. The first beach access to your left, we dump fill in there. We take the sand from Woodstock and Beach, and we dump it here through a permit process that I'm not sure was ever council approved. That was before my term, all right? And so we already do stuff like that for our county-owned lots. So is it a problem to continue to fix those things? I don't see it as a problem that way. You know, I was recently handed an article from 1988 where the Township of Norfolk Council was discussing the option of creating a public boat launch on Hastings Drive. Obviously, this never did move ahead, but what is the plan for those publicly owned lots? Does the public have access to them? They own them. If they do, what are we doing with them? Shouldn't we have a plan? We have every other kind of plan you can think of, strategic plan, official plan, secondary plan, but on some of the valuable property to the private people, we don't have a plan. We just sit there and watch as the rocks and sand get washed away, in jeopardizing our roads and the lives of the people that are in behind it. Even the Coast Guard has to borrow a ramp, a boat ramp, from a private person, and the county owns 70 lots. Oh my. You know, that's so wrong on so many levels. You know, there are so many erosion control methods available today that have never been available before. Norfolk, this one here is an attempt to do one from Norfolk County. The only problem with it is it's missing the rest of the science that goes through it. Jump back a few, Mr. Baird, please. One more. This is what happens in Q Beach in Toronto. You see all the headlands? They're put out there, and that recovers the beach. Okay, it's based on science. So the sand won't necessarily get washed away and down to Haldeman. Or it won't cause a problem down at Haldeman because obviously these people use science. If you go to the next one, Mr. Baird. Here's another example, same type of situation, building the beach out. Do you think if the Port Dover beach was being washed away that we'd be sitting here saying do nothing right now? I doubt it. We'd be looking for a solution, and the solutions are available. It's all in the technology. Next one, Mr. Baird. We could have something like this, right? And I'm not saying that belongs there, but this is an option, and the next one, Mr. Baird, or this is an option. These two options are brought forward from the St. Clair Conservation Authority. You're not going to see that come from LPRCA unless, I don't know, there's some kind of act of God, because it seems do nothing is the main thing in Norfolk County. And I don't agree with that whatsoever. We need to protect these assets. Long Point pays, what, $4 million a year in taxes? And we're not going to help these people out? The only thing that they've received in the last 20 years, a little bit of garbage collection, school bus. We gave them a new road that was 1.3, 1.8 million, I think, this year. So that covers half their bill. I think we can help them out. And one of the ways, Mr. Mayor, that we can help them out was what used to be a Shoreline Property Assistance Act. Okay, now, I've received this from the Essex Region Conservation Authority, and they've recently passed this on to the province to try to get it re-implemented. Historically, there was a loan program that was available to private property owners referred to as the Shoreline Property Assistance Act. This was a program that allowed property owners to borrow monies from the municipality to complete shoreline works, and then the loan was paid back through property taxes. Due to a decade of low lake levels creating no uptake of the loan program, the province discontinued funding the Shoreline Assistance Program. Requests for this program have now increased, and property owners are encouraged to approach their local municipality and MPP to request reinstatement of this program. Owners need an affordable method to protect their lives and investments. Not everyone has immediate access to the $25,000 or more that it could take. Affordability needs to be addressed in this solution, and the best way is to look at the entire picture. Long Point, Hastings, the Reach 3 in Long Point, wherever there's cottages along there, to me, it's the same water. So it's the same beach, and it has the same problems, or the best asset in Norfolk County, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate Councillor Height bringing this forward because I think it is timely. Probably all of us this winter, spring, have gone down to Long Point and looked at the cottages along the first section of Woodstock as well as on Hastings Drive. The day I went down, it was a blustery day. I walked out and within a moment or two, a lady came to speak with me who was a cottage owner. And her cottage, it wasn't at imminent risk, but we looked at one or two on either side of her, and they literally are at imminent risk. And she complained to me about the fact that they cannot get permission from anyone to do some emergency protective works. And I think that's what a lot of those folks, at least, I'm speaking more about east of the end of the causeway now rather than on Hastings Drive, but I think that's what those folks primarily are looking for. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the jurisdiction of LPRCA to issue permits or not for that kind of emergency work to be done in front of private property, probably MNRF as well. But it is, I support having that done, I really do. And if it would make it easier for LPRCA to implement a program to allow these kinds of emergency measures to be undertaken to protect private property, for us to put a resolution forward to support it, and I know that was part of, I think, where Councillor Height was going with his motion, then I think we should do it. I also happen to agree with him that if the Shoreline Property Assistance Act still exists as a piece of legislation on the books, you can bet your bottom dollar that people all up and down the Lake Erie and Lake Ontario shoreline are probably doing the same kind of thing that Councillor Height is doing here tonight to encourage inquiring, at least, putting pressure on the province to see if that can't be reinstituted. If it's still there as a legal piece of legislation, which it probably is, because we all have watched the news reports from Toronto and east of Toronto where they're battling high water as we speak. And people have invested a whole lot of money in those private cottages. So, Mr. Mayor, I sort of support where Councillor Height is going to on this. I do feel I would prefer to see us deal with the two paragraphs separately, two separate motions, because I think probably all of us would support the second part. Maybe not. But in terms of who should be responsible for undertaking a shoreline protection plan, whether that's for short-term emergency work on a case-by-case basis, or whether that's to look at the entire shoreline from the west ends of Hastings to the east end of the provincial park, that's another completely different thing, and believe me, I suspect it would take years probably to undertake it. What I think is truly needed right away is some emergency shoreline protection type work that an engineer probably could say you could do this temporarily. It could be removed either when the water goes down or when you get a much better longer-term plan. So I may ask to have some wordsmithing done on the first part of Councillor Height's motion, and quite frankly, redirect primary responsibility towards LPRCA. But I do support what he's asking for here, on an emergency basis in particular. Thank you.
Councillor Black, please.
The word negligence was used, and I've actually referred that to that word before. I believe that Norfolk County's negligence is allowing people, knowing that it's an unsafe place to be there, and to allow any further development. That's where the negligence is, not saying, okay, we're going to protect you, and you can stay there, because I don't think any amount of protection is going to actually work in that area. Ultimately, you've got, and it's not the same as Port Dover, where you have a whole residential area behind it, or Toronto. Behind this thin sliver of sand, you have a huge wetland. So you've got two forces of nature back to back. You're in a totally unsafe area there. The negligence is allowing people to stay knowing what the conditions, the unsafe conditions are there.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Geisens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it is time that we have a serious look at what's happening at Long Point, whether it's Hastings or now on Woodstock. I know that my sister had a cottage at one time on Woodstock, and they put in steel sheets, and I think they were about 18 feet deep, and drove them, and it's still there, and it's still working. I think what needs to happen here, and I heard the deputation say they are ready to do their part of it. And the only problem I have with what Councillor Oliver was saying, you're going to spend some money, and then later on, somewhere along the line, you're going to have to take it all back. And the Conservation Authority, I'm sure, is still going to want to look at some type of engineering to do it, because if you're told to do whatever you want and it doesn't work, then who are they going to go after? So theoretically, what we need is a shoreline coastal engineer to be able to work together with everybody and begin to do something to help these cottagers. And whether it's on Woodstock or on Hastings, the only problem with Hastings to help the cottages is the county's property. So theoretically, we need to do something with our own property that will not, I guess, cause problem to some of the cottages, and that's something that maybe we have to look at. I know that in '85, when it went through there, we dumped, I don't know, tons and tons of old kill foundations to try and keep the road from causing problems. We're now into the road. What are we going to do with those cottages if that road goes out? So to me, that there is something that we're going to have to do, either build up the road or do something so that the cottagers at least can get out to the as far as they can. Right now, you could be stuck up there. And I know at the time when it happened in '85, the mayor, which was Mr. Abbott, took a great big huge, bucket and everything like that, and drove through and got people out sitting in the bucket and out of Hastings. So theoretically, it was done and it was looked after. But like I said, we need to do it right the first time, not half. Well, I won't say the rest of that. Thank you.
Councillor Columbus?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. With respect to that first paragraph, to hire a coastal engineer to develop a shoreline protection plan, who from staff would lead this project to set out in terms of reference of what we'd want done by this coastal engineer? like which departments that come under? You know, what will the terms of reference be? Has some other municipality done it already that we could perhaps copy? Any thoughts?
Through the chair.
Mr. County Manager, do you have any thoughts? I can't answer that question.
Clearly, on some level, we'd be looking for someone with a good hydrology background, which is not expertise I think we have on staff. Granted, I'm new, so maybe I've missed it. That being said, this has got in the event council approves this or some variant on the motion that's currently before the floor, it's got to involve multiple parties at this table. Or there's an option that we could come back